Welcome to a Community Partners interview, where we explore the organizations, opportunities, and resources that look to make change in our daily lives. I'm your host, Lilly Cereghini, and you're listening to a Voices for Ability Radio, all abilities, all the time. Today, I'm joined by Brad Evoy, the Executive Director for Disability Justice Network for Ontario. The Disability Justice Network for Ontario, DJNO, aims to build a just and accessible Ontario, wherein disabled people have personal and political agency, can thrive and foster community, build their power, capacities, and skills needed to hold people, communities, and institutions responsible for the spaces they create. Their vision is to create a world where disabled people are free to be. Thanks for joining us today, Brad.
Happy to be here.
Brad, could you tell us a little bit more about what inspired you to work at the Disability Justice Network for Ontario?
Yeah, so I think with the Disability Justice Network of Ontario, our overall work is so focused on the broad sense of things that impact folks with disabilities in this province. And so for me, as someone who's been a part of, advocacy communities around, our community for broadly disabled folks, it really connected strongly with me. I think that the potential to engage with disability justice principles, to really be able to dig deeper into some of the underlying connections between issues and be able to push that in terms of policy advocacy, in terms of public education, felt like a really important set of work to do, and is built on the work of so many people in our community, Sarah Jama and our initial founders, and members of our community that have built up a whole host of different projects and avenues in our organization.
Cool. While doing my research, I saw that the DJNO have a lot of different projects going on. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of those?
Absolutely. So, for DJNO, we're involved in a whole bunch of different spaces. And I think the reason for that, in part, is the way we look at our disability justice principles, right? It's so important for us to think about, broader cross movement solidarity, broader cross disability solidarity, but also trying to center those who are most impacted by issues, in our broader society. And so for us, that means looking at things like, the Ontario group home system and being able to challenge issues in institutions across the board through our campaigns and policy briefs on that issue. It looks like tackling seclusion, restraint, and punishment in educational institutions, against disabled students. It looks like being able to tackle medical racism and medical ableism in healthcare spaces. And it looks like, trying to support disabled prisoners. Because I think that, many times when we talk about, disability advocacy and disability rights-based work, some of those areas fall to the wayside and don't get the focus they deserve. And so for us, our role is not to be necessarily some sort of representative organization of everyone in our community, but to really bring a spotlight and to shine a spotlight on the needs of community members who are often left behind, who are often left out of conversations when we talk about disability. And I think too, looking back at the start of DJNO, it was founded in Hamilton in 2018 by mostly Black and racialized disabled folks, and so the centering of those perspectives, as well as a youth perspective, has been really important in terms of DJNO's overall kind of perspective. And, I think lastly, too, when we look at the kinds of work that we do, the kinds of public education and policy advocacy stuff that we focus on, we try to keep in line with broader disability justice principles. And so, sometimes that means, lobbying government or, working in different spaces. Sometimes that means broader public education. Sometimes that means creating broader policy analysis or trying to make connections between organizations to build better supports for community members. But all throughout this kind of work, it's critically important, I think, that we, focus on centering those most impacted across the board. It's not often, for example, that we talk about, you know, um, disabled workers and migrant workers in a care home and care context, right? Whereas, often it's, for example, like a division between care receivers or care workers, when in reality, disabled folks are often in both sides of that equation. So I think that like being able to look at things from those sorts of perspectives is critical to what DJNO, brings to the community.
Absolutely critical, absolutely, and it sounds like a lot of, like, everything everywhere all at once sort of approach because there are so many moles to whack in this situation.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like when we look at this kind of stuff and we look at where we're at, in Ontario, I think there's a few things that we have to consider, and I think that for us, we are in a constant state of in this province wider state austerity, a lot of broader cuts that have been existent in our community for over 30 years that we haven't fully recovered from. And so, when I look at that kind of reality, it's no wonder that we're very vocal on issues like uh, housing and homelessness, for example, right? Like so much of those communities, in terms of folks who are either precariously housed or who are unhoused right now, are disabled. And the broader statistics bear that out from like the Federal Housing Advocate and other spaces. And so I think that when we look at that, I think we really genuinely have to think to ourselves what what it means to be a disabled person in this province, and how the wider systems that work within our broader spaces, how all that comes together and impacts us on a whole bunch of different levels. And so for me, I think it's like being able to dig into some of these issues is, the thing that I find most fulfilling about this work, but also is the thing that I think really brings our community together.
For sure. I also saw that you have a news and views tab on your
We
website.
do.
What does that entail?
Yeah. So, we have a lot of broader research that comes out of our organization and has historically. So, like, in addition to, the public education pieces, there's often a lot of pieces that, we've done over the years, sometimes in partnership with universities, sometimes in other sorts of spaces as well. So often that's in those areas, as well as some commentary from some of our staff and members over the years. As well, we also have some of our broader like international work in that area, because while our main kind of remit is in Ontario, sometimes we're sending letters to city councils across Ontario. Sometimes we're speaking to folks at the United Nations. And, that's the broad kind of remit of the work that we do. And it gives us a lot of opportunity to, try to collate some of those things together. And I think for us too, it's really important to ensure that, as we're developing, new campaigns and programs, that we're also, providing opportunities for folks to see how we got to some of those conclusions when we're able to, and really put out there some of our broader work as we're pulling things together.
I mean, yeah, informational access, it's quite important. Are there any restrictions to the services at DJNO, such as age, caregivers, or family members only, things of that nature?
Yeah, so no particular restrictions and services that way. I think the one thing that I would say in terms of things that we do, and this is kind of the thing that we're not really funded to do, or not really that we advertise much, but like one thing that people often reach out to us for is to connect when other services fail, and when other connections are not immediately prominent in community. So a lot of the times, we will try to help folks out and make other connections, and support folks in community to get connected to other organizations or other sorts of um, resources in community. Or if they don't exist, try to understand that so we can really forward broader advocacy. So if we look at issues in home care or group homes, for example, some of that advocacy work really comes out of you know individuals reaching out to us and saying that they can't access a service or they can't access this and that and what have you. And while we're a small team, we try to keep on top of those kind of connections where we can. It's always a little it's always difficult because we are a small team and don't have say the resources of like a whole kind of casework team or things like that, but we try our best to, at the very least, keep those things connected and in mind as we, build our wider kind of advocacy work.
For sure, for sure. I mean, I was even talking about this in class yesterday. We can't always advocate for ourselves. I like it when people with disabilities can advocate for ourselves and we're actually listened to. But at the same time, like, structurally speaking, it's not our job. So people going to bat for us is quite nice.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's like, and I think too, the thing that I think about a lot with this is that there's there's so many different resources in community, and that kind of mapping also is just really fundamentally necessary. It's something that we're thinking about more in terms of building new projects to build that out and do some more support on those sorts of work. Similarly, we're also looking to do some more work, I think, on housing in particular. That's such a huge issue. In particular, just yesterday, as of time of recording, um, the provincial government just released new legislation that's proposing to really roll back protections on renters. So, looking at undermining a lot of broader protections for folks to, either have, you know, review of evictions, having consistency in tenancy and rent control. And like, one of the things we've always heard from folks, who are unhoused, disabled folks who are unhoused, is that like ultimately we wanted to see those expanded rather than blown up in the next little while. So we are definitely in a period, I think, of deep concern with how the broader government is moving about these sorts of things. But also for us, I think a need to continue to expand what we're doing and thinking about, and building more resources to be able to get that done.
Sure. On the inverse side of that doom and gloom, without using any names, can you share a success story with me? What happened when someone asked you for help?
Yeah, I think one of our success stories, at least the way that I would term success for the things that we do, I think it's been a success to develop our phone lines for the broader prison system in Ontario. I think that it doesn't always result necessarily in a whole lot of material difference all the time for folks, but at the very least, there's connection and the ability to connect with people in ways that they weren't able to connect before. And I think that when we think about like the kinds of success that we have as an organization, oftentimes it is building new resources. It is building ways for folks to navigate systems like our, uh, broader, disabled prisoner toolkit that's up at enablingjustice.ca, as well as looking at other materials that we've released around medical racism, the education system, things like that. For us, I think being able to, provide the opportunity for folks to, be able to engage in their communities in as full a way as possible, being able to empower ourselves to challenge, that kind of policy is a success in itself, right? Like when I think about our group home policy brief, for example, that was a policy brief that was developed by grassroots members of the community. It's not like there's a whole team of us sitting in a back room as like some kind of professional research outfit to bring that together. That came from community, and so even having the ability to make and build that platform together and be able to take that to government is a success.
Absolutely. Community integration is always a success. we are 27-ish% of Canada's population.
Mhm.
Not only is that a quarter of the population, that's also a massive voting bloc. Let's work together.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think too, it really gets into this question of, what does it mean to actually be able to build space for ourselves to be able to hold authority and power to account. And I think it goes back to the core mission of DJNO in terms of the things that we're trying to do, and spaces that we hope to build for community to take up.
Absolutely. Now, what is the one thing you see happening over and over again to individuals with disabilities that shouldn't be, and how do we stop it?
Yeah, I think the thing that we see most often, whether it's in education or in prisons or in group homes, or in broader community, is that ultimately in all of these spaces they kind of have aspects that kind of reflect each other, right? And it's aspects of these systems that engage in more punishment, more isolation of disabled folks, and fundamentally not having the ability to necessarily represent yourself in these spaces in a good way, where so much of our individual personhood, our rights within these systems are undermined every single day. And there are really material ways to address that. I think that when we look at things like the group home system, for example, what we need is individualized, personalized funding, so that folks can carry out those spaces in a way that works well. When it comes to education, we need to have legislation in place that allows for disabled students to uh, practically access accommodations and spaces, and to be protected from violent punishment and seclusion and isolation very directly. And I think the same can be said for things like social assistance and housing, where ultimately we have very clear protections under the Rights Code for members of our community, but we don't actually have the means to enact that practically. And so I think that what we need is, to be blunt, massive reinvestment in our social systems. That is the ultimate solution to so much of our problems right now, no matter what aspect of these issues that we're facing. It really comes down to, no matter what level of government we're talking about, real deep reinvestment in our social systems so that folks can have the social assistance funding that they need to survive, so that folks can have the home care funding that you need to thrive, so that you can have the housing that you need that meets your needs on a practical everyday basis. And those are decisions that come from ultimately government. And so, really, our role is to keep prodding on that and at that, and making sure that folks have the ability to continue to you know bring that voice forward, right? Like, the very fact is that in so much of this broader country, there just isn't a practical way for our decision making and personhood to be recognized under the law. In many cases, our personhood is undermined by legislation that can take that away, so that we're represented by other decision makers instead of having truly supported decision making throughout basic processes of our lives. And so I think that again, comes back to this idea of government reinvestment, of building up the structures of our broader state to make that work for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen ODSP? It's an
It
embarrassment.
absolutely is. It absolutely is. And it's one of those things that fundamentally doesn't need to be this way. Just to make the example, right? Like, ODSP is the way that it is, and OW, because many folks who are disabled in this province are on Ontario Works, even though they probably shouldn't be. They should be on ODSP, but get left off of that system for one reason or another. And, the reality is that folks should be able to access that, but often cannot because of cuts that were made to the system by Mike Harris in the 90s. And, the costs of that to our community are still being felt 30 years later. And it's like the same folks. So Mike Harris again, his family is deeply involved in the private home care industry, in the private group home and long-term care facility industry, whether it's their connections with Chartwells or Paramed or what have you. And it's like, the thing we have to kind of grapple with is that the very people who broke the system and who've made the system more difficult for us to live in are now profiting off of the very problems that we see in community. And that is just the fundamental reality of, what we're dealing with.
Agreed. Are there any events coming up for the DJNO?
So right now we are going to be doing a film screening this weekend.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah, focused on broader disablement that's occurring in Palestine right now, alongside our sibling organization, the Disability Justice Network of British Columbia. We also have some upcoming transit town halls in Hamilton, and we'll be rolling out our education toolkit very soon as well at dreamingsaferschools.ca. So that's really exciting. That's not out just yet, but hopefully will be soon. We also are going to be continuing to push some issues around Bill 60 in Ontario, looking at some of those housing regulations I was speaking about earlier. And, we're also going to be continuing broader work on group homes and the broader prison system as well in Ontario, knowing that there's been so many issues in both and often common issues in both. So there's lots happening at DJNO all the time. And I really, hope that folks can, get involved where you can.
Speaking of, if someone wanted to become a member or volunteer with DJNO, what's the process for doing so?
Absolutely. So the first step is to connect with us here on um, our main email. So that's info@djno.ca.
Oh, that's very easy. Nice. What is the one thing that you think everyone should know about DJNO?
Yeah, I would say further to that point, the thing I would want folks to know about DJNO is that one, we are deeply committed to disability justice principles. We want to ensure that folks in the community are able to really live that possibility of being able to advocate and develop ways to hold systems to account. So if you are looking to do that, please get in touch with us. We have a lot of projects ongoing that are always cooking one way or another. But some of our best projects have come out of individual members of the community reaching out to us and saying, "Hey, I'm having an issue with transit in Hamilton," or "Hey, I'm having an issue with not being able to connect with family members at a group home," or "Hey, we're really worried about these new pieces of legislation. How can we, push back?" And I think that for DJNO, that's our role, is to think about ways we can engage in broader public education, think about ways we can, give folks the tools to not just do things through DJNO to push back, but also to do that within, ourselves and within our own communities, and to support grassroots work that's happening in community already. And so if that's something that you're interested in, reach out.
Actually, it is.
Mhm.
So, if listeners are looking for more information, how can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. So our main website is djno.ca. We also, right now, if you're interested in some of our broader work, broader coalition work, we are one of the co-hosting organizations for the End Austerity campaign. That's at endausterity.ca. And beyond that, friends, I would say, check out our various toolkits. There's some fantastic ones that I mentioned earlier. There's one at enablingjustice.com that is our broad prison project, and looking at broader criminalization that racialized and disabled folks are facing in Ontario, as well as towards just care, which is focused on the overall system of residential long-term care, and a move towards a more socially just home care system as an alternative. And that's at towardsjustcare.com. So there's lots of different pieces that we're working on in ourselves, in community, and we're always really excited to connect with folks all around.
I love that. I love that because of two maxims I have found in the disability advocacy scene. Firstly, is nothing about us without us. And secondly, is if your advocacy is not intersectional, I'm not interested. So I love that you bring up disability and race in conjunction with one another.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a fundamental core of DGNO's work, right? I think that being able to look at our work through that intersectional lens is a core part of disability justice work, and being able to connect that experience to the material conditions that people face. It is a material reality that disabled people who are racialized also face additional barriers when it comes to medical ableism, when it comes to social assistance, when it comes to how accessible housing, when it comes to systems like group home systems and what have you. All of these things are intersecting and interlocking, and so that's why we're here, and that's what we're here to do.
Splendid. Brad, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be able to share with you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Brad. I really appreciate it. You've been listening to a Community Partners interview here on V4A Radio. I'm your host, Lilly Cereghini, and remember, folks, stick together because we're all in this together.